You're an observer in the European Parliament, and the issue of partial elections, let's put it that way, for members of the European Parliament for only 1 year, I guess, is ongoing. What do you think? When should the elections take place?
Well, first of all, Croatia is obliged to organize ad hoc, as we call them, elections for the remaining part of the mandate of the current composition of the European Parliament. So is to say the legislature of 2009 till 2014. There are several considerations which have based our strong feeling that these elections should be held at the same time as the first round of the local and regional elections, which take place on the 19th of May. The first reason is we want a high turnout at these elections. I think it is of the strategic importance that Croatia sends a strong message, first of all by its citizens, and secondly to our partners, that we care about the democratic legitimacy of the first 12 MEPs. Second issue is also the rationalization of costs. The local elections in Croatia are usually conducted in 2 rounds. So the second round is supposed to be held on the 2nd of June. And we feel that the first round will have the highest turnout. And of course, there has been a change in the legislation that the voting or electoral committees can conduct 2 elections simultaneously. So they can count the ballots for local elections as well as for the European Parliament. And the third consideration is that we have to respect our citizens, that they should not be called in a relatively short period of time to go out and vote 3 Sundays in a row. And finally, by having elections on the 19th of May, we leave sufficient time for possible complaints vis-à-vis the Electoral Commission, for possible I would say, solutions in front of the Constitutional Court. And also we need to leave some reasonable time for those who will be elected to prepare for a new office, because it's a serious change in their lives. So therefore, all things taken together, and also the fact that on the 19th of May, I think we will have a very much clear situation about the certainty of the completion of the ratification process. If the elections are held, for instance, in April, which was a little bit tested by some of the voices in the government, first of all, we think that it is not within the democratic standards. The law will now enter into force on the 1st of March, and if you hold elections after 45 days, this is not serious, not even to inform the people about the system of the proportional but preferential voting, which is a novelty for Croatia. And also, it would leave very little time for a reasonable campaign.
Yeah, but what do you think about the arguments of the Prime Minister that if the European elections are held in a single day, this would help raise European issues to the public awareness?
I think that, first of all, if you want to raise awareness on Europe, then the current government should have continued with the communication strategy after the referendum held in January 22nd last year. I simply have seen a very clear deficit on this communication side. Not a lot has been done. If you look at the website of the government, of the Ministry of Administration, of the Electoral Commission, you don't see a single word about the European elections. So I think that argument is a very weak argument from someone who hasn't done his homework. This is very clear.
That argument is pretty valid all over the European Union, because in many countries, I'd say maybe in all member states, there is the question, do actually the voters vote on national issues when it comes to the European Parliament, or on European issues? And in most cases, it's the national ones.
Yes, but Croatia has these elections coming at a very specific moment. When we learned that according to the accession treaty, and the treaty was signed on the 9th of December 2011, that it was clear we must organize elections before the accession, we all thought, okay, it is for 1 year. The logical, sensible thing is to do it with the local elections, which are by law scheduled for a 3rd Sunday in May. So it was never really a doubt in the minds of everybody who was involved in the European issues. I am of the opinion that we should not underestimate the Croatian people, Croatian voters. I think they can clearly distinguish two campaigns. If we properly organize it, especially through electronic media and the involvement of the debates on issues which are focused on various policies, on budget, on the position of Croatia, on the region, on enlargement, I think they can clearly and very easily distinguish whether they are voting for a list for the European Parliament or whether they're voting for their local mayor or the city council.
Quite a lot of things are going to happen before the accession. And what do you think is going to be the main challenge for Croatia's accession? Do you expect any problems with the ratification process in neighboring Slovenia, for instance?
Well, this is a very sensitive and delicate issue, as you know. We have had difficulties in the accession negotiations with the border issue, and which was finally overcome by the agreement to go for an arbitration, and the arbitration agreement was a compromise. Now we have this old transferred savings from Ljubljanska Banka, which Slovenia has put into the context of the ratification, which we, of course, do not think it is suitable at all, because it has nothing to do with the accession, but the problem is on the table and the solution should be found. We feel that the government should have addressed this issue with more vigor, with more energy, with more higher political involvement even in the months which are now behind us. But now, as opposition, we are supporting the finding of the solution. And what has not been properly taken into account is the very complex internal political situation in Slovenia, whereby you have literally a minority government. They have very minimal requirements to even call a referendum on a certain issue, and therefore we are coming into the last months of ratification where there are still some uncertainties. We have heard positive news that there is a general understanding of an agreement how to overcome it. We would be very happy if the Slovenians ratify on time. This is the key issue. On the other hand, our German friends are planning the ratification also, I think, to be completed in May. And in the meantime, I look forward for the ratification also in Denmark and the depositing of all the instruments to the Italian government as a depository.
So, do you think that there is any risk or for the reforms, because there are really too much things ongoing right now? The dispute with Slovenia, the too many elections maybe will take place in a pretty short time. Isn't this consuming too much energy? Will this have an impact on the remaining efforts that need to be put forward?
Well, as far as the simultaneous elections are concerned, I think there have been many cases across the European Union where countries have organized European elections together with local, regional, even referenda. Croatia would not be a unique example. This is not an unusual practice. We need to be very clear on this. The Slovenia issue, it is being dealt now first on the experts, financial experts, ministers of foreign affairs, now finally taken to the level of the prime ministers. The Commission is coming up with a final monitoring report in the middle of March. There has been a clear progress on the issues of the privatization and the restructuring of the shipyards, which was one of the strategic issues of the 10 points. The reforms of the judiciary are continuing. This issue with border crossings around Neum, the little piece of land dividing Bosnia and Herzegovina land, dividing the Croatian south, Dubrovnik County, and the rest of Croatia. This is now being finalized in technical terms to lift the quality of the crossings to the European standards. So these are all parallel processes which have been ongoing for a long time. But
so you're not concerned this would in any way affect the reforms process?
You mean the economic reforms?
Not only the preparation process for accession, because there are, although a few, but still there are issues that need to be dealt with.
You know, we have been working so hard for so long. The whole process is not only since the start of the negotiations in 2005, it has been an effort for 2 decades almost. And of course, in the last months, we will do our utmost to complete it on time. and to have a very important milestone in the young Croatian independent history as of 1992. This July, so I think we will consensually, especially as an opposition party who was leading the government when we concluded the negotiations, we will give our contribution and hopefully have a very nice moment in all of our lives on the 1st of July.
Okay, thankfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.